we were doing a critique, and he's like, okay, here's the rules. Okay, the rules is you cannot say anything nice about this series of paintings.
Wow.
Not one positive thing. And it was really hard.
That's brutal.
And that's what he wanted. He was like, you only can say negative things. And I went in there and I was like, I almost couldn't say anything because I'm so used to sweetening the medicine with a little bit of sugar, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
All right, everybody. Welcome to Waiting to Dry. It's the podcast where one of the co-hosts will drive 2 hours and jog 8 blocks to be here. It's called Dedication to the Craft. So I'm Sergio Lopez.
I'm Josh Lawyer.
And we got our guest,
Adam Caldwell.
Yeah.
greetings.
How's it going?
It's going good.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
Thanks for inviting us to your studio here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in your studio. You share a studio with a bunch of other artists in San Francisco.
True.
I'd say the studio building.
Yeah. There's about 100 artists on 2 floors.
Whoa.
Wow.
Dang. I don't think I've ever been here, actually. They do open studios and all that here, too?
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's everything from painters to like macrame and basket weaving. And
Oh, really? Nice.
every kind of craft and art as well.
That's cool. Do you actually talk to a lot of them?
Yeah. I'm friends with a lot of the people here. There's a
That's
lot
good.
of painters. You know, John Wentz used to have a studio here.
Oh, did he have it here?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
nice.
just down
That's
the hall, and a bunch of other people come in and out. You know.
Now he's in France.
Yeah.
I know, he's in Paris kicking ass.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were talking earlier. You, one thing I didn't know about you was that you actually are a teacher as well.
That is true. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. I teach at the Academy of Art.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sergio.
Subject of many discussions on this.
I heard about that. Yeah. I've been teaching there forever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a lot of students' opinions, and John once taught
Yeah.
art at one point, but
Right.
so we got his opinion on it. But you're our first
Like
actual working.
current teacher. Yeah.
I'm full-time faculty.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
How do you like that?
It's really good. Mostly I get health and dental benefits.
Yeah, that's cool.
And free art supplies, free models, and I get to draw like 6 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Free art supplies, like Utrecht hooks you up and all that?
Yeah, I only teach drawing though. I don't teach painting.
Oh, all right.
I just teach the beginning figure drawing, beginning charcoal rendering classes.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
I do that on purpose so I don't have to think too much. Like I don't want to be talking to students about their ideas about concepts or anything. I'm like nuts and bolts.
When you teach beginner drawing, does it make you a magic man to all the students?
You mean my magical drawing skills ability? I get some students who are already really good.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You get some students who've been to crazy high schools in Korea where they drew still lifes 5 hours a day.
Damn.
And, for them, a lot of them waive classes, but if they take the class, it's usually like giving them some conceptual ideas and some vocabulary and helping them sharpen stuff up.
Yeah.
But for the average run-of-the-mill person, you can walk up to their drawing and like change one little thing and they kind of freak out. But I remember my teachers doing that to me.
Right.
It's just,
Did you go to school here or at the academy?
No, I went to CCA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went to the, a real art school where they don't teach you how to draw or paint.
Okay.
Stuff your head.
That's what you mean by real. Okay.
Stuff your head full of ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I sort of wish I at least wish I'd gone to the academy for the first like couple years.
Okay.
And then maybe gone to CCA for a little more conceptual.
Yeah.
Thinking stuff.
Yeah. They don't really do much of that at the academy, do they?
No.
It is weird because I keep it seems like there's 2 schools of thought, and I haven't really heard much of them both combining. It's like the schools that teach you technique, and then the schools that teach you to think.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever mix?
Not really.
It's like oil and water or something?
Yeah, I mean, you'll get, I think in illustration departments, it's like at CCA, they had Baron Story was teaching there and a lot of other really good draftsmen. They teach you some serious technique and skills and also teach you like lots of ways of thinking about the process and conceptual stuff. But in the fine art world, it's pretty split between the mental and the optical.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's cool. I mean, I don't know if that's cool or not.
Well, I think it's stupid. You know,
Yeah.
There's just, especially once you actually hit the real art world now,
Right.
I don't see that as being having any bearing on the whole situation.
Yeah, I don't
anymore.
think so.
Nobody,
At least,
nobody cares.
Yeah. In some circles, it seems like they're holding on to their conceptual side or their, representational side. But for the most part, I think people are kind of doing whatever the fuck they want.
Sure.
Really, it's just,
I
tell my students, it's like you just got to get good, and then you get good, you get out there, and you might end up designing toys or working for an animation company or having gallery shows or doing murals. It's like it's all good.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So did you grow up in this neck of the woods or?
No, I grew up back east.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Maine.
Oh wow.
Maine and Massachusetts.
The opposite side.
The cold side. Yes. where
when did you,
where you freeze.
Make the trek, the Oregon Trail?
A few years after high school, I decided to move out here and just be a bum for a while.
Nice.
So I kind of lived in squats and lived in really cheap, had crappy jobs and drew. And,
was that in the Bay Area or? Yeah.
Yeah, in Oakland,
Nice.
West Oakland, down in the hood and Dogtown.
Wow.
below San Pablo was the only place I could afford.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. And I didn't go to school till I was like 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I took a little gap there.
Nice. Just grinding.
Yeah, I was just working and painting and playing guitar and hanging out and
being young.
Yeah, exactly. I figured, now's the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's weird when people don't have that thought when they're trying to become adults when they're young. I'm like, go do something.
Yeah, you might want to take a year off after high school.
Yeah, America in general is weird like that. You hear about other countries where they allow, after high school or uni or whatever they call it, they will give themselves like their kid will go out and explore the world and figure things out for a little bit and then come back and go and do some schooling. America is one of the few places where if the kid isn't going straight to college, they probably are disappointing their parents or something like that.
Right.
So that's cool that you did that.
Yeah. It did disappoint my parents.
That was my next question.
Because they're both academics. My dad's got like a PhD from Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's like...
That's like the most academic you can be.
It's the most academic. Yeah, that was... that PhD was in our bathroom my whole life. And I was like, I'm supposed to get one of those. Yeah.
It would be weird if it was just like right above your bed, like on your ceiling. So every day you woke up, you just saw it.
Yeah. I'm sure my dad put it in a conspicuous place,
That's hilarious.
You think it was a bit of a rebellion for you to be a California bum for a while?
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I also just wasn't really motivated to go to school, I just didn't really care,
Right. And during that time, were you ever doodling or was that?
Oh, I drew every day.
Okay.
Yeah. I was mostly doing like comic book stuff, drawing comics all the time.
That kind of makes sense because you see like some parts of your artwork now that definitely pull from like the comic world.
Sure.
The talk bubbles and stuff like that, or like the pows and the zings or whatever.
Well, yeah, that's in this particular series I'm working on right now. I mean, I occasionally have that kind of stuff happening, but not like it is in this bunch of stuff.
Nice. Is that from something? Or you?
Yes. There is a idea. There's a method. There's a method behind the madness. So it's sort of like I was reading theory about stuff, and there's a quote from this guy Walter Benjamin, who wrote this really great essay called the work of art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, which is like this classic. You got like at CCA, everyone talked about this article. It was all about how, but he was talking about photography because this is like in 1920 when he wrote this. So he was talking about how an actual painting has a real history to it and a provenance, like it's actually been places, people have owned it.
Right.
It's a physical entity, and how that becomes more valuable when things get reproduced.
Okay.
Where you can reproduce text, you can reproduce photographs, and music. But now in a digital world, that's even more like a powerful idea that an actual work of art has this, what he called an aura. It's got this actual physical history that a reproduced thing doesn't have. What differentiates it. So anyways, I was reading that, and in one part of the book or the essay, he said that the logical consequence of fascism is the introduction of aesthetics into politics. Like they're the first political party to use aesthetics for political power. Like consciously and effectively, And I was thinking about our current political situation and like
so lighthearted stuff.
Yeah, pretty lighthearted stuff. Well, that's where the comic book shit come in, because what I wanted to do was sort of mess around with the idea of taking fascist totalitarian aesthetic poster imagery and then like breaking it up with like comic book imagery and like strong female superhero like characters sort of fighting against the fascist aesthetic. So I mean, it's pretty, that's how we were taught to think at CCAC. You're supposed to come up with some big crazy idea.
Right.
I mean, you don't need to know that to look at the paintings. They still got some stuff happening in
definitely.
It. But that was the idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I see your work, there's definitely this like political element to it, and this like a social commentary you're trying to make through it. I was trying to put the female, because a lot of time there is like a female figure or like the main character almost in each painting is usually a female figure. And then there's these things that are going on around the person, and I'm always I mean, I paint females, Sergio paints females, like and I was like, I wonder what the reasoning behind your choice in doing that was. I mean, you kind of already explained that. I'm just kind of backpedaling.
No. Well, yeah. I mean, I was conscious for a long time. I was really conscious about not putting female figures in my paintings. Like that was a conscious thing. I was like, I'm not going to paint women in my paintings because of
the overly doneness of it.
The overly doneness and how easy that is. And anyways, the history of the sort of male gaze on the female figure and all that stuff. So anyway, but I had a show at White Walls Gallery, and then I was like, I sort of came up with the idea of like doing a painting that's like this social commentary and history, and then putting a female figure on it who was like a sort of even like an advertising symbol. In the same way, like on a billboard, you'd have a product and you'd have a figure on there.
Right.
So
like a lady cutting bread or something.
Or just holding up the product, and smiling, and she has nothing to do with the product itself, but she's just there helping people get attracted to the product. Right. So I was like, I'm just gonna do that, and then everybody loved it, and I sold way more paintings than I ever had, and I was like, oh God, all right. I guess it's a good move. Plus I love painting female figures.
I mean, it's weird the push against doing like, for me personally, I always lean towards pushing what inspires me, and it's like I don't know, if I had to paint like a bunch of guys, I don't know if this sounds horrible, but I just wouldn't be inspired to do so. It just I don't know. There's also, I've always thought that kind of if you paint a guy in a painting, there seems like you have to paint him in this way where he's almost like beaten down by the world. Do you know what I mean? Like it always seems like every guy painting is just like a guy beaten down by the world. And that's the only time people are like, oh, that's a good painting. If you painted like a fucking normal guy, kind of like, I don't know, normal average guy, it just ends up being overlooked by all people I don't know.
I agree. Yeah. It's it's a strange, the male figure in art,
Yeah.
Because if you look at like classical Greece or whatever, that was the ideal of beauty back then. It was like the hot young dude,
with those back muscles.
Yeah, yeah.
Dimple in the butt cheek.
Exactly.
That was all. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm gay actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So it's a good segue into that. But I really hate the idea of being sort of labeled like a gay painter. So I kind of shy away from the male figure, just for that reason. Because it's like, because it's like, oh man, I just want to be like a painter. I don't want any other label. I don't want any other labels attached to me. So I kind of shy away from that subject matter. Yeah. I probably should, because I'm sure there's a big market. There's a big market for that stuff. Rich gay dudes like paintings like that. So
I remember I painted a guy once, and this guy saw my painting, and he was a gay man, and he was like really into it, and he's like, oh, that's awesome. And then the next painting he saw of mine was a female, and he was like, oh, like you're painting a woman. And then the next one was a female, and he's like, oh, this is what you do. Like that was just like the one-off, or the random guy you painted.
Right.
And I was like, oh man, I don't know. That's cool. We had a buddy of mine, Glenn Arthur. I don't know if you know his work.
Oh yeah,
he's another gay man who paints.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah,
and it's like, I think his reasoning was he just finds it more appealing to paint. And
I agree. The female form, it in contrast to the other things that I paint around them, which are pretty hard edged and graphic a lot of times, or architecturally based. There's just a better contrast. Yeah. There's more curvy, softer form,
Sure, softness.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean...
I think I remember Glenn saying also that even when he paints a guy, it comes out very feminized anyway. So he's like, well, I'm just like fighting against what I really want to do anyway when I paint a guy.
Sure. Right. And I could be painting some of my inner femininity too, because I'm totally like not a feminine looking dude. So
for sure.
So who knows? I'm sure that's coming out.
I mean, I think it was obvious by the reaction when you were like, oh, I'm getting like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of, but what was I going to say? I was going to just say that females also seem to be attracted to painting the female figure as well. Like,
oh my God, of course.
It just, I don't know. It just is what it is.
Yeah. It's cultural. I'm sure it's cultural to some extent. You know what I mean? I mean, we're just used to seeing females represented in painting in a certain way.
Yeah.
And you're so right that men are, like, if you do a downtrodden dude, you know what I mean? People get that.
Yeah.
But
I think
it's really strange.
I think a lot of times I kind of think of it the way of like every guy, or not every guy, but a lot of people, they really love their mother or something like that, and there's like this fondness to a woman who took care of you, and then the father is always like the guy who's like working and beaten down almost kind of, and comes home like tired.
Right.
And, I think it's easy to associate your experience with artwork. And so when people see the female figure, there's always a woman in their life who they look up to or admire. And there's always the dad, there's so many people that just have father issues in general. So,
right. Well, like I think in fantasy art is a place where maybe that gets flipped a little bit, because you do get a lot of really powerful, heroic figures in fantasy art.
Totally.
Yeah, and they're like obviously like a mythical, heroic ideal. They're not just some dude. They're like Conan.
Yeah, they're saving the world.
Exactly. They're what you wish your dad was really like.
Right. Yeah. It'd be funny to see Conan with a day job.
Conan the Librarian.
Exactly. It's like he's saving the world after his 8-hour shift.
Yeah, he's too tired to go fight the dragon. He's like, man, I'm beat.
Exactly. We'd all be saving the world if we didn't have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
At least we tell ourselves that.
No, I was just thinking about what you guys are talking about. I think there is something to do with like the archetypes that we have culturally about male and female, because it is a thing where you're like, yeah, when you paint a man, what tends to be the thing that people gravitate towards, at least their taste. Like, if it's a guy, it better be a downtrodden sort of like, or it has to be somebody going through some sort of struggle. And I think it's easier for at least our culture to swallow that image if it's a man who's like, I guess, typically thought of as like, oh, they're built to handle that sort of thing.
I hear you. Yeah.
Whereas it's a lot more distasteful to like put a woman in a compromised position.
Yeah.
It's just,
I hear you.
Yeah. And I think there is also this like, the man has been, kind of in charge for a long time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. People might hate what I'm saying right now, but historically, like the men are the people in power. So it's kind of like it's tough. I think it's tough to root for the team that always wins. Kind of. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's a pretty big part of the discourse nowadays in social media threads and stuff happening all the time. Mm-hmm. Well, I did a whole series for my last solo show at ThinkSpace where it was all it was based on theater, like a theater group that I was working with, and we set up, and I'd been meaning to do this for a long time. So we did like performances where I filmed and documented all their performances and then did paintings based on it. But the whole theater group was like people in wheelchairs, overweight older people, gay people, transgendered people. They're all marginalized members of society, but they were they're like a dance theater group. So they were like doing dance and stuff, but in wheelchairs, and also people dancing in like leotards who were like really overweight and like not professional dancers or whatever.
Right.
So it like really rubbed a bunch of people the wrong way.
Right.
That I was like, because I was like doing like traditional oil paintings of like some guy in a wheelchair with like a weird tiger head balanced on top of his head, kind of dancing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they were in a fairly traditional painting space, figures and environments with dark backgrounds and stuff. Right. But they were like not the usual people you'd see as a subject for an oil painting, and people were like not.
They weren't happy.
They weren't down with it. They were not down with it. They weren't down with people in wheelchairs. They weren't down with like women who weren't traditionally considered beautiful being represented as being, attractive enough to be the center of a dance thing, or kind of.
Were they mad because I feel like a lot of people nowadays, they get mad if they feel like you're being a social justice warrior, right? So they're like, oh, you like went out of your way to like, there's like this like mentality. It's almost like people are trying to correct the like you shining a light on what hasn't been light hasn't shined on before or whatever.
I understand. Yeah.
So
I don't know. I just people just didn't buy the paintings. I don't know. It was more they didn't buy it.
Oh, I see.
They didn't sell that great.
Yeah.
But what was the feedback on it? Like, did people like comment to you about the paintings?
Yeah, but I think there's an instinctive like pushing away from the subject matter a little bit. Well, the other thing is like I had them come do a performance at ThinkSpace in the gallery during the opening.
Yeah.
And people walked in and they were expecting, oh, I'm going to go to an art opening. I'm going to get a glass of wine. I might look at a painting, but I'm probably going to talk to my 3 friends I'm meeting there.
Yeah.
And then leave.
Get selfies in front of all the paintings.
Yeah, exactly. You know what happens.
Yeah.
And there were like people dancing around and singing and chanting and in wheelchairs bumping into people in the same costumes that were in the paintings. So they were actually like they were reenacting the paintings, and the paintings were a reenactment of their performance.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like this really kind of looping arc of
life imitating art
of creativity. Yeah, and that was what I wanted to explore in that series. It was like, different levels in fiction, like books where there's a book inside the book.
Right.
Or like in Hamlet, there's a play called The Mousetrap that is actually sort of about Hamlet in the middle of Hamlet, So I wanted to do paintings that were about another art form, about another performance, and then have that redone again when the paintings are being presented. So, yeah.
Did you get any, did anyone really enjoy that?
Oh yeah, a lot of people enjoyed it. And a lot of people got it. I just wasn't quite the right space. Maybe it's some avant-garde gallery in Berlin. It would have been incredibly successful,
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Yeah. And people are weird too. It's like, I don't know. It's almost like if you market that concept correctly, it could be a huge success.
Right.
Right. I don't know. In those weird ways, it's like the marketing plays a huge deal because you will attract a good amount of people who then want to support it for, I don't know, to maybe boost their egos or because they really are touched by it or whatever. Like it's just...
It was polarizing. That was the thing.
Sure.
Some people really liked it and some people didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, then I knew that it was good.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
If you do paintings and everybody's like, yeah, those are okay, then it's like, right, I better do something else probably.
Right.
Yeah. Subject, difficult subject matter in paintings. That's a whole topic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like how safe do you want to go? Do you actually want to sell stuff, or do you want to do something really radical and shocking? Or it's like.
Yeah, that is. I don't know. For me, I don't know if I've ever made anything shocking. But that's just kind of not how my mind works.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
Well, it's a painting, so it's a painting, so it's not going to be really shocking no matter what you do. I mean, it's not like performance art, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're like setting yourself on fire or whatever, crazy thing people are doing now.
And not only that, but it's like with the internet, people are so like, it's like like that Piss Christ picture.
Yeah.
It's like if someone came out with that today, probably wouldn't be the craziest thing, unless it's almost like if Donald Trump freaked out about it, then it would become a thing. It's like
if only.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love for him to hate one of my paintings.
Exactly.
Tweet about it. Oh God,
well, that would be great.
It's a good something to aspire towards.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the that lady that made like the sculptures of him with just like a tiny penis.
Oh right.
It was like
yeah.
I don't know. In a way, that's some genius marketing.
It is. It's because I've always been kind of interested about that in art history, like when you have like really traditional painting genres,
right?
And then you have people who are using the technique but doing it in a more, contemporary way or socially conscious way. That kind of fascinates me because I'm really enamored of like traditional painting technique for its own sake. You know what I mean? But I'm also interested in it. I don't know if it has any actual social value anymore. Like I think if you were actually wanted to do something to change things, you got to do movies or something, paintings like.
Yeah, I do think about that a lot too because as painters, especially if you're doing narrative painting, you're the director of one frame of whatever story you're trying to tell. Yeah. And it's like, directors can do these amazing things, but they also have these big crews.
That's true.
To create everything as well. And they have like a sequence that they can, like from the resource to the actual output, it's actually like fairly economical in the way that you think. Like you can produce something like you shoot a digital film, and that's once you have everything all set up, it doesn't cost you much to put it onto from your camera to whatever you're putting it on. Whereas with painters, you have to get everything all set up and however much resources it takes for you to get your concept together and put it in front of you and either paint it from life or from a photograph. Right. And then you spend all that time and resources, your materials and everything, putting that together onto a canvas. and then are you going to, hopefully it sells.
Right.
Like, how big are you going to go?
Right.
That's a factor as well. So,
and not only that, but like the actual, like, like, what's that movie that just came out with like the Avengers movie people are all talking about?
Infinity War.
Yeah. That movie, like, people are talking about it.
Or
like,
Black Panther.
Yeah.
That was people were actually thinking about that, like changing their perception of African Americans in our culture as being beautiful.
Or being offended by how many black people are in a movie.
Right.
Crazy person.
Yeah. It's hard. It's just, as painters, we're not culturally really relevant anymore as a medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one thing I could think of is like the Obama Shepherd Ferry. Like,
once in a while they pop up onto the cultural radar. It's just that everything is being, everything only lasts for 15 seconds now. You know, and to do a shocking, because I mean, people used to freak out at art openings. You know, they'd be shocked by a painting where like Sargent's painting of Madame X, where like her dress was like hanging off of one sholdder, and her makeup was too green. You know, and people were freaking out. You know, I don't know. I continually think about that now. I don't think that art can't be as moving or whatever as it used to be. I think what ends up happening is art took a certain route, and now like the value people find from it isn't what it used to be. But I don't think it's almost like if you look in history, like there's like waves of like, movements or whatever. And even today, I think like the amount of like amazing artists is like overwhelming. It's crazy.
But there still seems like Instagram is like the one place where people ingest art.
Right. Right. Isn't that crazy that we're like these, you don't know what scale the paintings are anymore. I mean, you never knew that in art books either. You know what I mean? You know, they see, like, I remember going to the Anselm Kiefer show, like, and I've only seen like little reproduction of his paintings, and I didn't realize they were like 20 feet high and 40 feet wide, giant. It's crazy how much seeing art in person is different than seeing it digitally. So you're so right. It's almost like we're painting on purpose to have something reproduced digitally and looked at on a phone. I keep telling my students, it's like, usually design-wise, you're thinking about a horizontal format, you know what I mean, most of the time, but you better start thinking about the vertical format. Right. Because millennials don't even turn their phone sideways to watch videos anymore. Like some crazy percentage of them don't watch movies sideways. They watch it vertical because it's too much effort to turn your wrist, Yeah,
it's like Sergio, he just did a 12 by 12 show for Spoke Art, and I have to do a 10 by 10 for Librarian. And it's like, when that happens, I'm like, great, I could take a picture for Instagram really easily.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm in that Spoke Art show too.
Oh, I remember seeing your piece in there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Good old Spoke Art.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I like them guys.
Shout out.
Hey, Ken.
See if he's listening. But that's another advantage that movies have over paintings, where they're built for a format that's easily distributed. Like every town in America has a screen that fits the format that you shot it for. Whereas like you have to go see that one painting in person to get the actual feeling that the artist was meant to evoke.
That's that whole essay, the work of art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, is all about that, and about why the real piece of art actually gets more valuable in the context of an easily reproducible medium. Right. The work of art, the actual handmade work of art, becomes more valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's the only thing left that has an actual history to it.
Right.
That copy of it is the copy. It's the only one.
Yeah.
And so it is getting instances of itself split off and reproduced digitally, but there is still that painting. It's still there.
Yeah, and I always think of art as like the movie world. Like the longevity of movies is very short. Even though the movie exists out there in whatever form. Like the amount of people that go back and watch movies is just getting smaller and smaller. It's like, what's the next thing to watch? What's the next thing to watch?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much with everything now. It's like whatever content's out there, you consume it, and then you go to the next thing. And artwork, I think, throughout history has just lasted. Like that's kind of been its mark. Is like, is the great art has always seemed to just kind of stick around. You know, from like the cave paintings on. Yeah, it's just been the one like form of evidence of humans that have kind of like stuck around when everything else kind of gets thrown to the wayside. You know.
Yeah, isn't it? It's crazy that like all we know of some civilizations is their artwork,
right?
You know, but we can sort of figure out what they were about, you know, by looking at that stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it goes, you know, even like the cave paintings, it always goes back to like, why were they even doing that? Like, what's the
right?
I don't know. There's like there is this weird connection between human beings and creating artwork, and like physically creating artwork. I think is like a huge important part of it. Like when you watch movies, you're just ingesting something someone physically made. You know, like. They had to make costumes and build sets, and there's like a physical part to that world. I mean, it's getting less and less.
It's getting more CGI.
But even then, I mean, until they get it down, there's still like huge part lacking.
Well, that's why people love they love stop motion movie. What the hell? There's they're blowing up. You know, people love them because they're real. You know,
and people are going back to like puppet stuff and things like that.
Yeah, because the other thing is you're totally right about the artwork. It's because there's something in any kind of sort of art that's not constantly shifting, where it's canonical. That's the version of it and it's sort of becomes solidified.
Right.
You know, whereas like with CGI, it's like you look at it and it's like, oh, that's like from 1982 and that's from like 1986, you know, and it's like dated and no longer interesting at all. Yeah. But you look at an oil painting like from, you know, Van Eyck or whatever, and it's like, oh shit, that's just as fresh and cool as any oil painting being done today.
Sure. Yeah.
There's something to be said for that timeless, you know, quality.
And it's something weird with like computer graphic images, even no diss to any of those artists creating that, but one of the things that I really don't enjoy when watching a movie is like realizing that something isn't what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and so with computer
that's that whole uncanny valley thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you just end up watching something and you're like, oh, that was fake.
Right.
And the fact that your mind goes there just kind of you lose being stuck in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, people can pull it off, but it is a skill set.
Well, I think people are less and less able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember being a little kid and like looking at like Star Trek on TV and being pretty much completely sucked into the entire thing. You know, that crappy little plastic Klingon ship was a giant spaceship.
Yeah.
And I was totally bought it, you know. But now when now it's like, I mean, I can't imagine what kids, like millennials, kids are growing up now. They must be completely just like unable to visualize anything that's not perfectly real, you know, perfectly.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's kind of sad.
Isn't it? I know.
I mean, that's probably the least of their worries. I'm like always just like, oh, you guys live a sad.
Oh my God. I have all freshman students every year. So it's like, and it's like half the time people are like, kids these days, they're on their cell phones and blah, blah, blah. You know, the faculty at school.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know, man, not only there's something about, you know, like my barometers, like I'll play Bohemian Rhapsody in my class as a background. The whole class sings every single part.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. And half of them are, you know, bumping their heads and throwing their hands in the air and like, you know, singing Freddie Mercury, you know.
For sure.
And, you know, so I think kids still understand what quality is, and they're
especially probably art students. I mean,
that's an incredibly biased segment of the populace. I'm like, kids are great. I'm like,
but I also wonder if it's turning the tide where it's like now it's cool. Like you get more hipster cred for knowing old things now too, as well. I mean, well, that's probably been a thing all the time too.
Sure. But I don't even know if kids know. It's like YouTube's kind of smeared out all media and all time frames into one format. So I mean, is it in the 1970s or is it some hipster reproduction of the 70s? Right. I don't think they know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, it's funny because whenever I drive through San Francisco or certain areas, I should say, of San Francisco, there's like this weird thing where I see where like the young generation is trying to kind of live this San Francisco hippie lifestyle, and they dress the part, and it's so funny because you're like, oh, like you almost like look like the pictures, but there's this obvious like modern like you just didn't nail it. There's like a dirtiness to like the hippie 70s that you know, it's just too clean.
They're missing the smell. They don't have enough patchouli on. They've bathed in the last month, so
exactly.
You're shaving your armpits. What a rookie!
Oh yeah.
Or maybe it's like acid or something. I don't know. Maybe it's not missing.
But
yeah, that's cool. One thing I like when I look at your art, I am always kind of like impressed by is it almost seems like I can see you trying to think of something almost like I don't know if I should say concept or something, but like visually imagine something that you find attractive, and it looks like it goes almost in waves. Like you're like, "Ooh, I want to try this out," and then you just start painting that whatever, you know, and you start playing around with lighting or with whatever. I mean, it's looked like you projected like images or letters on women for a bit.
I've done that,
and then you know where you would like block out parts of like the image, you know, and you seem like you allow yourself to kind of go places where maybe most artists or some artists, I should say, are almost like pigeonholed into like representing what style they've built up.
Right. Well, I was almost lucky to not really get really good realist training, I think, in some way. Because it didn't, I had to, like I went to CCA and I was one of the better draftsmen there at school. So everyone's like, "Oh, you draw so good," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, I draw really good," you know. And then I got a job at the Academy of Art. Yeah. And I was pretty confident. And then I walked in. I was doing a portrait demo, and I walked into the class next door, and Henry Yan was doing a portrait demo. In the class next to me, and it like changed my life. Like I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I know nothing. I'm a fraud, and I'm a charlatan, and a faker, and everybody's going to find out. And I literally ran back to my class, and I was like terrified that people were going to realize that I sucked, you know. So I was good enough to get a job, you know, but I realized like, oh my God, there are big gaps in my training. And I spent the next like 8 years like learning all that shit on my own. Right. You know what I mean? Like seeking it out and training, you know. But I didn't have that when I was, you know, constructing my images initially. So I feel like if you've trained that hard for that long to get that kind of technique, it's really hard to let go of. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I didn't have it, so I got it already being willing to do anything on the surface of the painting. Yeah. Then the realism just kind of snuck in sideways into the painting. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of, so instead of like having good realist technique and then breaking it, it's more like I was already just breaking stuff up and then just started to let the realism seep in from behind. Yeah.
It seems like, like just allowing yourself to kind of, I mean, even just admitting that you're not a great artist is like, we were talking about that earlier, how like, if you're a great artist, you probably hate your stuff or like hate parts of not all your stuff, but like you probably hate parts of your paintings and things. And how that makes you a better artist is just allowing yourself to kind of be like, oh, that part needs work or whatever.
Yeah. You got it. people who are optimistic are famously bad at judging their performance. Like they do video game things where people who are like, I'm an optimist, and then they do some kind of task and then they rate their performance, and it's horribly skewed. They're so much worse than they are. And people who are sort of pessimistic and judge themselves pretty harshly are pretty much right on about how good they are.
Yeah, you see it a lot with American Idol. If you watch the first week of, it's like the horrible people are offended that they were told they suck.
Yeah.
And then the good people are always surprised. They're like, really? I'm good?
I'm good. Yeah.
You know, it's like...
That's a good barometer. Yeah. I think our culture is really averse to criticism too. Mm-hmm. Like we're not a culture that gives criticism well or takes it well.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Like I know myself, I am I am so like taken aback when people say something negative about my work. Mm-hmm. Like I just almost can't stand it. You know. And I have a friend who's he's a connoisseur of the awkward. Like he likes to initiate awkward conversations.
Oh, really?
For growth.
That's cool.
Yeah, he was my kickboxing coach.
Okay.
So he made me fight, you know. He's like, you got to do real fights. So he'd like force me to train to
that's an awkward position to be in.
Yeah, exactly. Really awkward position to be in. But he'd do the same thing with my artwork.
It's probably easier to get into awkward situations if you know you can handle yourself in the situation, though.
Yes, exactly. But I think like in our culture, like we don't value that enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like really honest, forthright criticism from somebody is like a gift. You know what I mean? It's like someone's giving you something. You know, because if they don't care about you, they're not going to say shit. You know what I mean? And if they do, they're going to tell you that you got a booger hanging out of your nose. You know what I mean? Or that your breath smells or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and my wife, we go to this sushi restaurant near our house, and there was one time where like we ordered some sushi and we ate it, and the server came back and she's like, "Oh, you ate that really fast." And she was from, I'm assuming, Japan. And she was like, "Oh, you ate that really fast." And then the next time we ate there, we were like really hungry, so we ordered more sushi than we normally did. And she's like, "Oh, you guys eat a lot." And it's just like you do not hold back at all. And I don't know. This goes back to like cultural things where like they will just say it. Like they're not trying to be offensive or anything. They're just saying the truth, and we're just like, yeah, you got a point there, you know. And that's just, you know, it's just critiques. There was a horrible critique. I think might have told this story before, but I'm not sure. Where
which one?
Someone commented on my wife's artwork, and they said that it's like, I can't remember. They said something, and then. My wife, I think she was like slightly offended or something, and then one of her fans of her art just like went at the. There was no response needed by my wife because the lady she just went at her and said, I don't want to say what she said, but it was.
I do remember you told that story before. I want to say. Maybe it was, I don't remember what episode it might have been on John Wentz's episode, but yeah, I remember what she said.
Well, I mean, like, giving critiques at art school, right? That's, man, it's so hard sometimes. Because I got to walk up.
Are you supposed to? Oh, as the teacher.
I'm assuming. My God, that's what I got to do all the fucking day. So I walk up behind students, and it's like, the students who are good, they're like, will actively tell me, like, the beginning of the semester, like a lot of times they'd be like, I want you to be really hard on me. Like please don't hold back. Just nail me, you know, cause they know. And then students who are insecure, it's really hard cause you know, they'll defend their artwork. You come up behind them and you're like, you know, I think your head might be a little bit too big, and then before I can even say that, they're like, "Oh, I was going to do that before I know." And then
that
you're
was
like,
a stylistic choice.
I can just feel like my shoulders tense up. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is going to suck," because every time I try to help them, you know, I'm getting this pressure back at them. They're defending their artwork, and it's so hard to give those people critique. It's really difficult, and so I always give like several, you know, I'm not saying who is doing this, but I will give like a general example of like what you shouldn't do during critique and how you should act to help them deal, because they're going to have to deal with either gallery owners or art directors or other game designers. It's like, you can't be defending your artwork in front of those people because you're just not going to get a freaking job. You know? They're not going to want to deal with you at all. And definitely teachers aren't either. You know, you're just going to get ignored if you keep acting like that. You know,
right?
So I try to get them to realize that, like, you do your artwork as best you can, and that's your end of the bargain. You're basically done at that point. You put your artwork up for display, and now it's time for you to sit back and try to absorb honest critique, you know, and then try to use that to help you grow. You know,
that's awesome.
But it's hard to because I don't think they're used to that in our culture. Again, you know what I mean? They've had too many teachers, especially art teachers, who are like, "Oh, you're the best. You know, you're my favorite student. I love everything you do." You know, and it's like, oh God, you know, it's kind of toxic. I think. You know?
Think so.
I remember in school, the critiques were probably the thing I got the most out of. Like, I miss them now because nobody will give you a harsh critique.
Oh, let me help you with that. Sergio, your art is horrible.
Thank you so much. Yeah. You're the best
you
friend
could
ever.
Fix all of it. Could you just...
But yeah, it was a thing where there were people, I totally remember students, like peers of mine, being like, oh yeah, or they'll either try to defend themselves or sort of head you off at the pass, like before you say something, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know, yeah, I know,
you know them.
My drawing sucks. But yeah, that was one thing where now when I actually get a harsh critique, like, I appreciate it later on, but I'm so not used to it anymore. Whereas when I was a student, I was like kind of thrived on having those all the time, keeping you in line.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think as a professional artist, that's like the most beneficial thing you can do.
For sure.
Like Hiroshi, do you know Hiroshi Sato?
I know his work.
Yeah. He's got a studio down the hall.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a really great young artist. And we were doing a critique, and he's like, okay, here's the rules. Okay. The rules is you cannot say anything nice about this series of paintings.
Wow.
Not one positive thing. And it was really hard.
That's brutal.
And that's what he wanted. He was like, you only can say negative things. And I went in there, and I was like, I almost couldn't say anything because I'm so used to sweetening the medicine with a little bit of sugar, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
it's great, but
but I didn't. He's like, no, great. So I was like, we'll just go right in for the butt, you know.
But it was brilliant.
But it was really helpful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think as artists and as a culture, it'd be better if we could take that.
Yeah.
Just get a thicker skin about that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes feel bad for my wife because I'll critique her work like very harshly. But then people ask her like, oh, how did you like get so better in such a short amount of time? And she's always like, Josh. Yeah. He's just mean.
Well, in Thailand, they have a saying like, the better your friend is, the harder you beat them up in training,
right?
So that they won't get hurt when they're in the ring.
Yeah.
And that's just obvious, you know.
Yeah.
It's like that's what you do as a friend, you
know?
know?
Right? For sure. Yeah, that's what you're allowed is when the comfort grows of friendship. You're allowed to say like, oh, like, what's up with that part? Or,
right,
you know,
right.
You get to do that.
Isn't that funny?
Especially in our culture. I mean, there's almost like you're allowed to critique the closer you are. You can't really critique someone if you don't know them. It's like the, I can make fun of my best friend, but if anyone else does, I'm going to beat them up kind of mentality.
Right, exactly.
And, that's just a cultural thing.
Right. I think that's not a bad thing, you know, for us in public to be very civil.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but with good friends and fellow artists, I think it's good to.
Yeah.
Jesus, because I mean, you never know. Like, you might be doing something pretty obvious and pretty stupid with your paintings that if someone would just say, "Hey, that's really not working," you know, you could save so much time. You know, if someone said it and you listened. You know?
Yeah. Or just different ways of doing stuff that would save you time. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm obsessed with doing things the way I do them, and I don't know. I don't even know if I'm open to critique, really. My wife will sometimes tell me like, "Oh, why'd you do that?" And I'm like, "That's like my favorite part of the painting."
Right.
Like,
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Can you think of an example of that?
not off the top. Or she'll point out something that, like, say because I'll do like multiple passes on like a face, So on the first pass, she says like, "Are you gonna leave the face like that?" And I'm like, "No, I just started." Like it's like the first stages of it right now.
Yeah. No, there is that too. Like, I mean, that's my initial reaction to any critique is that you're A, probably not qualified to give me this critique. You know what I mean? And then B, like, I don't care what you have to say. But I did find in school like that sometimes it would be the person that I would probably have been least likely to credit their opinion would actually say something more valuable than someone that I did. You know?
Yeah. Or I think it's also useful if someone's not out to critique you. You know what I mean? If they're just like, "Why is that way?"
Right.
Where you're like, "Oh, I never thought," like, that'll open up kind of like that mindset of like, I shouldn't have done that or something.
Like a kid's question.
Yeah. Where if someone's like out there trying to critique you, then they're just trying to like, I don't know. It's almost like, it happens, like with people that regulate things or something where you earn your money by finding flaws.
Like critics.
So you'll find a flaw.
Like a critic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think of a critique as being what a critic does.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a different... Because a critique is more like an exploration of it. You know what I mean? It's like
I think so.
It's an examination and a probing into it, not a judging so much.
Nice. That actually makes me feel a lot better because we always do the critiques on our thing, and we're rarely harsh.
Yeah, it's never really an actual like criticism,
but we just kind of dive deep into the piece and try to like explore why they decided to do this or that.
Right? Exactly. It's different though. Like being a teacher, it's like my job is to
make them better.
Yes, and it's to pick apart stuff. Whereas a cultural critique is more like an examination of it on many levels.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's why I don't teach advanced classes.
Right.
Because I don't want to deal with the way they're thinking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with their concepts or anything.
Yeah.
Not because I'm not interested in it, but just because I don't want that to invade my own thinking about my own artwork and tire me out so that when I'm done teaching, I go to my studio and I've been thinking all day.
Oh.
Right.
You know what I mean? All I've been doing is drawing ellipses, and it's like the top of your ellipse is too flat and the sides aren't level and this one should be bigger than the one above it. And, that kind of purely nuts and bolts technical, your proportions are wrong. That kind of critique is just purely technical. I'm all good with that.
Yeah.
Judging someone on the quality of their ideas, I don't even know how you do that.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Well, did they do that sort of thing in CCA?
Oh my God, that's all they did.
Really?
That is all they did.
But it's so subjective.
Oh, it's so subjective. And you'd have one teacher who you knew hated certain kinds of paintings, and then you'd put a painting up that was right in his fucking sights. He knew he was going to explode it, and he'd just go off about blah, 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 realism, blah, 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 and just go crazy on it. And then do we used to do like 6-hour critiques. We'd paint for like a month in the painting department. Illustration was different. Illustration was cool, but painting, oh man, you'd paint for a month and then the whole class would put all their work up on the walls and you'd have a 6-hour critique. And it would just be the teacher talking the whole time.
You should have titled the painting where the professor would yell at you. You should have titled it "Angry Professor," and then just at the end of his rant, just been like, "Can you look at the title in the back?" It was a conceptual piece.
It was designed to make you do that as part of a performance art project I'm engaging in.
Yeah.
Thank you for participating.
Just Yoda him. That's awesome. Should we go into the critique? I mean, it's a pretty good segue.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if we should pull that painting in so we can look at it.
Yeah, I'll grab it. I had a friend who just ran a 50-mile trail run.
Jeez.
Oh, boy.
And it had just rained, so it was like mud.
Oh, boy.
I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? How could you possibly do that?
Is he one of those, like...
He's ultra marathon,
or
long, whatever they call him. Yeah.
He trained by doing like a half marathon, a 6K, a 12K in a month, and then that 50-mile run.
That's nuts.
That's crazy. Yeah,
that's nuts. All right, so it's critique time.
All right,
all right. So, do you have a title for this painting?
No.
No.
I don't. I usually don't title my paintings until right when the gallery is like, "Hey, do you have a title for this painting?" And then I kind of figure out what it's going to be.
Nice. So do you have a title for the show, or like an overall?
No, it's with the Dutch painter Van Roos, who paints all the like women with hair coming across their face.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. She's really good. No, there wasn't. I don't think there's a title yet.
Okay.
It's just a two-person show.
How'd that come about? Because you guys totally paint completely differently.
We do. I don't know. They just, I did a show. It's with Talon Gallery in Portland, and they did a Margaret Atwood themed show for the Handmaid's Tale author. So I did like a powerful, politically penetrating piece for that, and they liked it, and then just nice. I guess they had an opening.
That's cool. Put it and so this is at what gallery again?
Talon. Yeah, they have another gallery called Antler Gallery.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. That's a cool one.
Yeah, so it's the same. It's the same crew.
Is it the same area, Oregon?
Yeah. It's still both in Portland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're just in different parts of the town.
Nice, cool. So this untitled painting is of like a woman, a redheaded lady wearing glasses and kind of like a Catholic schoolgirl uniform.
Yep.
With an electric guitar in her hand. She looks like a badass.
Yep. That's what she's doing.
It kind of has like this almost like explosion coming out from her, like almost like not necessarily like an actual explosion, but like it seems like everything is kind of coming.
There is an actual explosion too. Yeah. There's a burning car behind her.
Okay, yeah.
So
there's a riot. It's a riot scene. There's a woman with a dog on the left and a cop. They're slightly abstracted out, but they're
right. Okay, yeah, I can see that now.
Yeah, and then there's a sentence that says, "No, it isn't mad. I can feel my body bursting with power such as I've never known."
Yes.
Is that a quote from an actual comic book?
Yeah, they're all the whole show I'm doing has quotes from the 1940s comics when superheroes were fighting Nazis.
Okay, that's cool.
So they're all I have all these quotes that are from like right before Superman punches Hitler in the head, or
so like another lighthearted moment in life.
Exactly.
Or in history.
Well, that's part of the theme of the show is like using these fascist and Soviet and Stalinist era propaganda posters, and then kind of having them butt up against comic book imagery.
That's cool.
And creating like a tension between them,
and kind of like using like that era as like almost in seeing like the similarities between that era and ours. Is that kind of like the yeah, absolutely, completely. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
So there's like the bare bone skeleton of the composition is a Soviet era constructivist poster.
Is it?
Those big triangles and that circle and the diagonal are both part of this big poster. It's kind of a famous poster.
All right.
And then I just overlaid that and the riot scene and her and the comic book imagery.
That's awesome. It's got like it's got some cool like graphic elements to it.
Yeah.
Did you ever have like a graphic background, like a?
No, I mean I studied illustration, but they were pretty. They were not enamored of graphic design much. They were always like graphic design, But you can't. You sort of have to deal with that a little bit in illustration.
Right. Yeah. I mean the pieces. I mean I'm really into the piece. And the main figure is I really enjoy it. I just enjoy like her expression. She just she almost has like the feeling of being a superhero, and I guess like the bubble helps with that like narrative,
right.
Of like her being like the person that saves the day or something.
Right. Well, guitars will do that to you.
Yeah.
They make you feel pretty heroic.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's so telling because I remember, I mean, I play guitar. I was in bands in high school, and I just spent most of my teenage years trying to shred in my bedroom. And I actually thought like, oh, girls can't play guitar.
Right.
Just because I didn't see any.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so stupid. But now it's like you go on YouTube,
right?
And there are like heroic shredders who were so much better than I would ever dare to be, and they're 12. You know,
right? Yeah, it's for sure.
So, but I feel like the guitar. You know, like in the show, I'm using some cosplay imagery and some superhero imagery, but she's sort of like heroic, like rock goddess. You know what I mean? So she's like rocking the guitar
it kind
as her symbol of power.
Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, that totally remind me of that.
Absolutely,
yeah.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah, that's what. And it has that feel like even like the triangle stuff. I didn't know that had to do with the pop propaganda stuff, but it almost looks like those are like the sounds, kind of like the way it kind of comes out of the guitar. Like that's why everything kind of like pushes out from her in all angles.
Well, she's like this centered figure, which I usually, because of my training, I don't do.
Right.
You're supposed to put your focal point on a third,
right?
You know,
right?
It's the rule of thirds. So, anyways, she's sort of stuck right in the middle. So, but no, I was really conscious about doing the composition. You know, I usually do it in Photoshop, so I spent a lot of time. I jiggle the images around in Photoshop, so they line up just so. And I spent a lot of time moving them. And cropping stuff, and then overlaying, and then putting lots more multiple variations of the images together. So there's like a lot of different subtle variations on the composition before I decide which one I like.
That's awesome.
Okay, that's cool.
I never think about that. That's probably a good... Do you do that, Sergio?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do all my compositional work in Photoshop. I never do like thumbnails anymore these days.
Right. Well, I had a teacher who Baron Story, who's like
he's like a legend around here.
Oh my God, he is the greatest teacher for anything. It's not even art, just to like as whatever you're gonna do. He's a great teacher, but he give you like all these strategies for disrupting the composition, for disrupting your creative process.
That's his work there, right?
No, those are my cheap imitations.
Oh,
of
okay. they look very Baron Story.
Well, that was done when I was studying with him.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then,
if you look at any student from CCA's sketchbook from like 1990 till like a few years ago, it looks like Baron Story's work.
Okay,
yeah, and it takes a few years for you to stop drawing like Baron Story.
Sure.
But one of the things he did was like he'd generate all these ways of making compositions, and one was to like make a composition way too big and then randomly crop it. He used to do it on a photocopy machine. So he'd like make a big drawing, and then he'd put a frame, like a piece of paper that had a little frame cut out, and he'd put it underneath and just hit the photocopy button and move it around randomly. And then these pages would spit out with these like really weird croppings and really strange compositions, and then he'd take those and paint on top of them and do all this crazy ways to make compositions. So I was really influenced by all that kind of training. It was really cool. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, I've done similar things in Photoshop like that. That's so much easier now to do it with computers.
Oh my God, he used to take us down and we'd use the photocopy machine. I mean, we had computers. We actually had computers.
Yeah,
then, but they were not. Like Photoshop took a long time to do stuff sometimes.
Right,
It was pretty slow.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same for me. We still had to do a lot of stuff on photocopy machines because that's how they knew how to do it.
Right.
So they weren't up to date with Photoshop yet.
Right, yeah. Yeah, my Photoshop skills are extremely primitive. They're basically exactly what I do if I actually cut the images out physically and stuck them on top of each other. There's not much difference.
Is the smoke in the back of the painting, is that supposed to be part of the explosion, or is that
there's a car over there that's on fire, and there's smoke coming out of it.
Okay.
It's all abstracted out though. Yeah. Like, so I just kind of, made everything more geometrical shapes.
That's cool. I also like the fact that it's a person nowadays. I mean, I don't know. I do think that, I mean, there is this part of art that very much reminisces about the past, especially a past that they never lived. And I think there's kind of this hurdle where artists almost get stuck there, and they don't allow themselves to like commentate on their current time period.
Yeah.
And it, I don't know. I'm not saying I hate their work. I just feel like there's such a lack of, I mean, I don't know. In the same way, there's a ton of artists that are really like killing it.
Oh yeah.
You know, they're really just pushing the limits. And
right.
I do enjoy that there's cars in the image and that there is like a current, you're trying to represent this current like environment that you live in, which
right.
I think there's a lot of artwork that's lacking in that, or I don't know.
No, I see. Well, like think like the way one of the ways I think about it is like if you look at surrealist,
right?
You look at surrealist art,
yeah.
And you look at like a Magritte, and there's those dudes wearing bowler hats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And those suits,
right?
And it looks so freaking cool. Right. You know, you look at that, and then if I did like the same painting, but there was someone wearing modern clothes,
right?
It kind of instantly pulls it out of that timeless
right
feeling.
But see, my thought is like, it's just because we're in it. You know, it's like in like 50 years, if you look at a painting where someone's wearing the clothes we're wearing, they might think like, that's fucking crazy. Like
right.
they used to wear that back in the day. But we're so stuck in like the reminisce and push forward
right.
that there's very few people that I think are just trying to paint something of like today's period. And I think, you know, when you look at all the paintings in general, like all the old painters, like they painted the people in their eras, and we look back at them, we're like, that's so cool. Like they look so cool.
Right.
But in my head, I'm like, well, maybe that's just because we're stuck in the time we're at. So we, you know, someone wearing a Led Zeppelin shirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just like
pants.
Yeah, or whatever. It's just whatever to
right.
us.
I think eventually, with enough time, it becomes sort of timeless. You know what I mean?
Right.
It becomes just something in the past. It's not specific. Like if I look at paintings from the 70s, I can't help but look at their bell bottoms.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or the big collars. It just dates it.
Yeah.
I'm not removed enough from the 70s for it not to be like this obvious thing. But if I look at a painting from, 1620 and one from 1700, I don't know what the frickin' difference is between the collars, you know what I mean? The rough, it all looks like an old painting to me, which is all cool. You know what I mean? Yeah. It doesn't have any particular date or really,
Yeah.
So,
but I think there's also, we talked about it earlier where like art, I think like the longevity of how long art lasts, it's really long. It just lasts long.
Right.
You know, like people go and they look at old ass paintings, you know, and that's what they do. And I think representing the time is also like very important. Even like the, like the abstract painters, like, those guys, even though they didn't paint people dressed in the garb or whatever they wore at that time, they still represent a time period.
I agree.
Through their style.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's like this weird thing where we only, like, there's like the people that paint like almost like to try to make their people look timeless. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, there's people painting like, there's definitely a style of the time, I think.
Well, there's that high point, like the late 1800s, was a sort of the high, the technique back then was like at that point, it was the best, what I mean? Right. It's almost objective. It's kind of objective. If you're a painter, you're like, yeah, those guys painted the best.
Right.
And it's like, everybody wants that look, it must be that good, and it's like, how do you do that, but not paint the same shit they painted?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like too many people, they look at a Sargent painting and they want to paint something that looks just like a Sargent painting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like taking that technique and then making it contemporary.
Right.
Because if you look at like the French Academy, they only painted history paintings and they only painted mythological paintings. I guess they had interiors too, like sort of paintings of like contemporary life, but it wasn't really ever political or anything. And then you had people like Millet and Courbet, who were the realist painters.
Yeah.
And they were like, had that academic skill, but they'd paint like peasants farming, but it would be like showing how fucked up it was. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they would paint stuff or they'd start to paint the impact of like the industrialization on the environment. You'd start to see smokestacks and stuff in the background, you know, and like things that were really contemporary with that same level of skill.
Right.
You know, there's some kind of, you know, I don't know. It's an interesting kind of place where there's tension. You know what I mean?
But even like you know, like what's his name, T-Bone or whatever his name is. I always forget his name. The guy that paints like cakes and stuff.
Oh, Wayne Thiebaud?
Wayne Thiebaud.
T-Bone.
Yeah.
There you go.
T-Bone.
I'm horrible with names.
T-Bone Thiebaud.
That's how I remember it, or how I've always remembered. I'm horrible at names, by the way. You know, like he'll have like cars. In his painting from like, and people will like look at, or like that one, what's that like Nighthawk painting or whatever that's called?
Oh, Edward Hopper.
Yeah.
And you like, and you kind of like you look at those people's paintings and the dress they're wearing or like the cars they have or whatever, and people, they just kind of look back and then they go like, oh, like that would be so cool to paint at that time. And it goes back, like that Woody Allen movie. You ever watch that, like Night in Paris?
Oh, sure.
Kind of reminisce, like you reminisce about the time period that came before you, and you you like time travels or whatever, and then he realizes like, oh, like they're reminiscing about the time before that.
Right, exactly.
And you just, humans just kind of have that urge to do that. But
I agree.
I think, I don't know. I'm just going on a rant.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think we all reminisce about our childhood and when we're really young.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I think nostalgia is like just part of the human condition.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually working on like some ideas to try to capture that like with my palette. Like I'm like I think there's like something weird about you know, like if you watch like a Steven Spielberg movie where he does like a period movie of like his childhood, like there's something in the air about how he makes those movies feel, and I think it's something he's doing by altering the colors.
Of course, he is.
And a couple other things. And like I'm trying to figure out how to like subtly do that in my artwork.
How do you paint the colors of the past?
Yeah.
Well, at one point it was black and white, right?
Yeah. I wish I was born then.
And then it was like you know, Polaroid film.
Right.
It's so weird how you can, if you paint from old photographs, it's like boom, that's like that era right there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty powerful.
And I'm trying to mess with the colors, but you know, like photographing a model and then altering the colors to make it feel old without like almost doing it too far. Like there's like a subtlety to that where you can really pull it off.
Yeah, that's an interesting place to go.
Yeah.
I like that idea. That's pretty cool.
But Sergio has to take off.
Yeah, I hate to have to put the brakes on everything, but I do gotta go. So
how dare you, Sergio? By the way, is going to Carmel
to collect my prize
for a plein air artwork. Art thingy.
All right.
So Sergio's got to take off. We'll talk for a bit more.
Cool.
Yeah. Been awesome so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who needs them? Am I right, guys?
Yeah.
Who needs them?
Get out of here. He's got an 8-minute run back to his car.
I know. I hope he can make it back. It's he won an award, so I guess the coolest thing is to not be there for it. You know,
that's the you never show up on time for your own art show.
Exactly.
You got to be late.
Or you know the Oscars when they're like, anytime someone can't be there, it's the biggest movie star. They're like,
of course, they're too busy.
Yeah, Denzel Washington couldn't be here today. Like, of course he couldn't, because he's famous.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, awesome. Well, now it's awkward. I'm just kidding.
There's no buffer. It's just you and me.
Yeah. So this show in June.
Yeah.
And then you have all these paintings. What which I don't even know how much Sergio actually talked about the paintings, or how dare he. But and then after that, you get to take a break. A
little bit. I mean, I've got little group shows here and there, you know.
Like tackling a big project like this, is it pretty tough for you?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's stages that repeat every time I have a big show.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're mysterious to me, but they're completely transparent to all my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'd like start bitching on the phone about it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is the time when you do this. This is like, 6 weeks before your show, you do this every single time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do, don't I? Yeah.
And you lose sleep.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty obsessive about coasting into the finish. I don't like to. I don't like to scream to the finish line. Some artists love it. I don't know what the hell is wrong with them, but they thrive under pressure. They wait to the last minute, and they say they're just doing it, but I'm pretty sure they do it on purpose, because I think it puts a fire under their butts that makes them work really well.
Yeah,
pressure.
The last thing I just did, it was a 4-person show, so it wasn't as big of a hurdle as this one. But I set it up and I timed it really well to finish really nicely. But then my wife's birthday was like 2 weeks or a week or so before the show. And last minute, she's like, oh, we should throw a party. And that kind of threw a huge wrench in my time management.
Yeah.
I mean, it was her 30th birthday, so it's like
you better
it's like a big
show up for that, man.
And so I ended up having to like scream to the finish. Like, I was brutal, and I've been pretty good before that, and I don't know.
It's not a comfortable place to be.
No.
The Talon Gallery changed the date on the show. It was supposed to be the 15th. It's supposed to be the middle of the month, and like maybe 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, they changed the date 2 weeks earlier. Which scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to get anything done. And I've been picking away at this show for a long time. So I had some of these paintings started like 10 months ago, and already in process. So it's like it wasn't really that bad.
Right.
But yeah, as it comes down to the wire, it feels like everything you decide to do is like more important and also harder to decide, because it's more irrevocable. Like, you can't really go back and change it at this point. You got to kind of stick with it. And that's when helpful. That's when having a good friend who's a good painter come over and look at your work towards the end. That's when I most value it.
Right. That makes sense.
I'm like, what should I do now? He's like, yeah, that part isn't working. Right. You got to change that, because there's enough stuff there, and it's committed enough already at that point that whatever they say is going to be fine tuning. Right. That's the stuff I like.
The last 5% of
I don't. I'm pretty
1% or whatever.
I'm confident enough in my general ideas and my general composition and stuff, but it's the nitty gritty stuff that gets harder to figure out. Yeah. And just having a fresh pair of eyeballs on it is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I haven't even tried that. Usually the last 1% is the pull your hair out. This needs something, but what the fuck?
But what is it? Yeah. And sometimes if you had a good painting buddy to come over and be like, and I'll never see it. They're like, yeah, that corner is weird, and then I'll go, oh my God, you're so right. That's totally wrong. And
or did you plan to leave that way? And you're like, huh. I didn't really put that much thought into that.
Exactly.
The last show I just did, I really wish I had 3 more days. It's like that little 3 days of just sitting and looking at the paintings and just fine tuning everything is so important to me. Right.
But like you said before, who actually besides you even notices that at all?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the dilemma. I don't even know if we said that on the podcast, but I think that was before. But just the idea of you as an artist, at least for me, that little 1% or whatever is really what I think pushes the painting from like good to great. But I don't think people even notice that. Like, they don't see the because I'm looking at the painting and it's in every single form of it. So when it gets to that like 1% and I push it past it, I'm like, oh, that like made the world of difference.
Right.
So they don't get to see that 1% if it's not there. So they see the painting and they go, oh, that's an amazing painting. And you go, like, if I had that 1%, I think that would have made it way better.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yeah, I feel you though. I mean, at some level, they're probably responding intuitively to that. You know what I mean? To that level, like people are going to feel that, even if they looked at the two paintings and couldn't really tell which one was better, they're probably going to have some response to that last little bit of effort.
I think so.
Yeah,
at least when people do, then I almost that's when I'm like, okay, you get it,
right?
You know, or like, oh, I appreciate your opinion. Right. I don't know. That might be
well. Look at that. I mean, you look at like, okay, there's like Michelangelo, and then there's like one of Michelangelo's followers. Right. You know what I mean? Like most people would look at both artists and they'd be like, oh yeah, that's the same dude. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when you're really, schooled, you're like, yeah, it's just not as good. I can't even put my finger on exactly what it is, but it's a little awkward,
Yeah, for sure. Or like even like like Rembrandt, like he like plays around with like proportions and stuff, so you can like nitpick that. But then it's just like he's just amazing. Like there's something about it that you can't, and that I think it's that like little that little bit extra.
Right. And I think you got to agonize over that stuff. I don't think you could coast. You can't just, there's some painters like Sorolla, right? Sorolla?
Sorolla?
Yeah, Sorolla. Yeah. They said he painted like a pig ate. Like he just slopped paint on his canvas with just slapdash. Every stroke was like just flip. He's just throwing paint at the canvas. And his students would cry, they'd weep because they could never paint like that. Right. He had no hesitation at all. He'd just throw that shit on there. It would always be right.
That's tough.
Yeah, and it's but I don't think I don't think even Sargent, who looks like he paints like that, didn't paint like that.
Right. He's much more methodical.
Well, he'd paint the same painting like 20 times in a row. Right. And then he'd scrape it all off and then paint it again. Yeah. So he knew like the structure, he knew the colors, he knew had everything down and he was just working on that little twist of the brush to make it fucking look like effortless but perfect.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's that. It's in giving a sense of real order but spontaneity at the finish.
Sure. Yeah.
Like sometimes, like for me, sometimes it's actually doing something really unexpected and weird or bold to a painting is what finishes it.
A little scary.
Yeah, like sometimes I'll just wipe half of a head out, you know what I mean? Or like put some crazy big shape over some big important part of the painting.
Right.
And and it's just somehow, it's just that kind of spontaneity is what makes it work. You know what I mean? Yeah, because you can't just grind. It's not always a smaller move at the end. Is that last 1% can be a big move. Yeah.
Yeah. My process, I almost like focus on the detailed stuff early on, and then it's kind of like allow myself to play around at the end and kind of figure out the stuff I didn't think about, and just kind of like let the piece kind of like go wherever it seems naturally wanting to go.
Right. Probably farther away from the reference. Yeah. As you the farther on you get.
Right. Yeah. And there definitely like scary parts to that, you know. And I mean, I work in oil now. I used to work in mixed medium more, and that was much scarier because it was on paper. So like paper's way less forgiving with like when you're working with like watercolors and other things like that, where it's like, I just ruined that thing. Well,
yeah, you can't really ruin an oil painting. No. You can just wait for it to dry and scrape it back off.
Exactly.
Repaint.
But yeah, that's so do you actually have completed pieces for the show, or are they all like 99% done?
I have no idea. I'm going to keep working on them right up until I need to stop and they need to dry. And then I'm just going to varnish them with Gamvar. Thank God for Gamvar. I don't know what how could people wait 6 months and then varnish a painting and have it ready for a show? What the hell was that about?
Wait for it to oxidize.
I don't even understand that.
I know.
So I'm going to varnish them at the last minute and then drive
That's
up.
Exactly what I do.
Drive up to Portland.
You're driving up?
I'm driving up.
Nice.
I ain't got a lot of money and I don't want to ship it and I don't even want to pay for a plane ticket. So I'm just going to pay for gas.
That's the way to do it, really.
When I have shows in LA, I always drive down. Yeah. It's like, I'm not shipping this stuff.
Yeah. Why? And then you get to be there for the show and build relationships.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other part of the art world.
Oh my God. The best. I had a show in London once and it was like not a successful show. It was at a brand new gallery that was amazing. Right next to Lazarides gallery. So it was like in the perfect spot. And nothing sold, but it was like the best. Is like going to a new city, right? But you're a part of it. You're culturally a part of the city. You know what I mean? It's the best feeling. You're walking around like I belong here,
right?
I'm contributing to something, to the cultural activity.
Yeah, and you're not a tourist. You are.
I'm not a tourist.
Yeah. You're here for a reason, exactly. And it's a really good reason.
It is.
That's awesome.
That's one of the. That's one of my huge motivating factors to be more successful. Is I just want to I want to show in
you just want to travel.
I want to show in London. I want to show in Paris. And it's like I want to go. Yeah, I want to go. I did a residency in Budapest last summer, and that was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had a free apartment and a big, huge studio to work in for a month.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
I don't even know where Budapest is.
It's in Hungary.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Eastern Europe. Huh. So it had been like, there's this crazy, sort of accumulation of history, like really ancient history, and then like communist Soviet era block houses and weird giant communist statues and like ancient statues all in the same place.
That's crazy.
Yeah, really amazing town. Yeah, but
nice. How was the food?
Oh my God. I went to a restaurant there and it was like a giant butcher counter. It was just meat and you just pointed at the meat and then they'd fry it. And
That's
then,
awesome.
Yeah. And then they had like sides and I pointed at the side and this guy took a scoop and he started laying out this potato salad and he didn't stop for like a minute. He's just like plop, plop, plop. You got this huge plate of pork and a huge plate of potato salad. And it was like, this is what people eat here, It was awesome. I was like, oh, this is good.
That's awesome.
I can eat here forever.
That's like I don't know why, but I always like associate like the food with the people, and I'm always.
It's a meat and cream culture there.
Okay.
Yeah, like going to the grocery store there was so surrealist. There were just endless. I don't speak Hungarian, and there's like just these mystery products. Like I have no idea what they were. I was like, are those eggs? Or are they sausages? Or are they? Is it like cream?
Those
or like some weird?
The weirdest three, like
just the strangest, like weird looking stuff, and most of it was like obviously like sour cream and stuff mixed up. It was like, wow,
yeah. That's cool. Whenever I meet anyone foreign, I'm like, how's your food?
Oh, that's I think the food and the art are the two things where you get the best window into the culture, probably, right? I mean, they're going to tell you the most about it.
Yeah, and people. There's this cool thing that happens when someone's like a foreigner, and then you ask them about food, where they like light up. They're like, let me tell you about this.
Let me tell you about this stuff.
Yeah.
My mom used to make this.
Yeah.
And you got to try it. Yeah, you got to try this.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. You're going to Portland.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
That's a cool city.
Yeah, I've never been up
and
there.
And that I've been to Antler Gallery. I don't know if is that the other one newer? Like, is it?
The Talon's the new one. They're like a year old.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had this successful gallery and they opened up a smaller one. Josh Keys just had a show at Talon.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
Nice, good work.
Yeah, he's a good.
He's a staple in the art community,
isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I
know. Yeah,
he's been around for a good amount, just killing it. But that's cool. When did you start teaching?
Well, I graduated from college in 1998, and then started teaching 2002, I think.
Oh wow!
I started
good
teaching.
Chunk of time.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I wasn't really painting then. When I got out of school, I was doing storyboards. I had a teacher, Halstead Hannah, who's a great illustrator, storyboard artist. And one day when I was a junior, I think, he came into class and he's like, I got a job and I can't do it. I'm too busy. He's like, do you want to do it? And I was like, oh shit, I got a job.
Yeah,
I'm in school and I got a job, and it was doing storyboards. So I did all these storyboards for this agency.
That's cool.
And then they just got me all this work for years. So when I got out of school, I started doing storyboards, and I was teaching and doing illustration. I wasn't oil painting at all. I didn't start doing that until 2007 or 2008. Yeah. So I've only been painting for 10 years. I started 10 years ago doing fine art. And
awesome.
I've been getting training for it the whole time. I was getting ready to do it, but I just was too afraid to do it, you know, and too sort of sidetracked by teaching and doing illustration.
You produce a crazy amount of work for someone that's teaching at the same time. I don't know if that's the regular teachers. I'm not in that world. That's not a... Yeah,
a lot of teachers you get, you have an idea that you're going to teach and then go paint afterwards. It's not not easy at all. It's really tough.
Yeah, that seems... Because for me, I have a full-time job, but it's physical. It's not mental. I obviously have to use my brain, but but there is a part of the art world where or the creating art that takes a lot of mental strain, and just and I've always, I don't know if it's even true or not, but I've always thought that having a creative job would be tough for me, because then it would just kind of zap that
that's why I don't teach anything but beginning drawing.
Oh, I see.
It's completely objective. It's all technical, and it's almost like physical skill.
Right.
You got to teach some concepts, but plus I've been doing it so long that I only teach 2 classes, and I have them literally completely down. I walk in, I don't even need to know what week it is. I just look at the calendar. I'm like, oh, it's week 14. Okay.
Right.
I've got 5 different lectures loaded up, in my hard drive, ready to go, depending on what the class has been like that month, and all my materials already. So it's really pretty easy.
Does it, do you think having that kind of the fundamentals, always kind of being on the forefront of what you teach, help you? Does that help you with your art?
It's huge.
Yeah.
But one of my most sort of advanced teachers was in school once, he was like, if I could do anything differently, I would teach basic drawing every semester.
He gave you the answer.
He's like, I would force myself to draw cubes, cones, and cylinders until my eyes fell out, just over and over and over and over again,
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a real blessing. And then, I teach figure drawing too, which is, as anybody who draws a figure knows, that's always the challenge. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. You know what I mean? It's always...
Things can look wonky or stiff all the time.
Yeah, and then you stop teaching for 6 weeks and you come back and it's like, oh my God, I suck already. It's been 6 weeks and I can't do a gesture drawing.
Yeah, that's kind of you're getting ready for the show. There is this weird stage to creating a show, at least for me, where I'm rolling full speed, and I'm everything is kind of my mind is just producing and doing it at such a an easy, almost I just can I'm we're starting the show off. I usually have an initial piece that's kind of like my let me loosen up and kind of break this in and get ready for the show kind of piece. And then I don't know if that's applies to you at all, because I don't know. Well, first of all, I don't know your work fucking
right.
Your just how you when you start like multiple pieces at a time.
Well, I always start by working on my sketchbook. So I start sketching little thumbnails and ideas, and then doing maybe some more involved drawings or I'll go back and look at an old sketchbook and go through things that I've thought about doing previously, you know. But that's where it all starts. That was our, like in illustration, you had to constantly be working in your sketchbook and writing in it too. So it's like a journal of your creative process.
Right. Yeah.
So I start with that, and then I usually go to research after that. So I'll spend a lot of time reading about a particular subject and researching stuff, and go back to the sketchbook and read and write and sketch, and then I'll start finding images. And so I'll spend a lot of time going online based on what I think the subject matter is going to be about, and just getting data, getting visual images, like tons and tons, and putting them into folders. So I got all these folders lined up with all these images. And then I go into Photoshop and create compositions based on my sketches, using all the stuff I've got in these folders, and create a whole bunch of compositions. So I got all those lined up, and then I'll start painting, once I got all those possible compositions lined up. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do that one.
Right.
And I'll start like 4 or 5 paintings at a time, probably do the drawing from it, and then start painting 4 or 5 of them, and then do another 4 or 5 usually, and then just build up the show from that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I do a good amount of pre-work in my sketchbooks, but my co-host, who decided to run off on us,
he's got an award he's got to receive.
Yeah, he's better than us, I guess. How dare he? But yeah, we've talked about the sketchbook thing, and he's like very much not in it. And I'm like, I can't even comprehend that. I know. Like, so when you, like you said, for some shows you like read up on stuff, but like this show you're working on now seems very like much about like the current environment. So is that like, when you do reading on that, is that like, do you do it about like past experiences that mimic us, or is it about current news events, or? Yeah.
Both. A lot of my paintings has a lot of historical references in it.
I noticed that. A lot like statues and like historical figures.
Yeah,
and
a lot
stuff
of
like that.
History in there, sort of how history influences the current state of things, and how people aren't aware of it. So in a lot of my paintings, there's kind of like a surface of the present, and then there's kind of the past is sort of, because it's repressed. It's almost like a Freudian idea, like the past is repressed somehow, so it kind of explodes in violent ways into the present, and it's like coming through the present in ways we don't anticipate, because we don't know about the past very much, So I'm kind of colliding that kind of imagery a lot. So anyways, for this series, I researched like fascism and totalitarianism, which is kind of awful. I spent a lot of time. It's dismal. So I spent, and that stuff is happening all over the world right now. You know what I mean? So I was reading about Nazi Germany over and over again, watching videos, watching documentaries, and listening to podcasts, and then reading and reading theory about it, and reading about the current political situation, and then just getting lots of images of, of that kind of propaganda stuff.
Yeah, there's this weird thing that I've noticed recently where both sides are just kind of calling each other fascist, and I'm like,
oh my God,
this is so weird.
Yeah. You're not. They're not really fascists. They're like neo-fascists or proto-fascists. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's also this like weird thing that happened. Like, how you were explaining how like there's like an explosion of like the past kind of repeating itself, and I don't know. There's this weird thing where it's almost like even if you understand the history behind it, there's almost like this uncontrollable like force that's like pushing it forward.
Well, exactly. I mean, it is because the forces that sort of converge to generate that situation are huge, like economic, social, political forces that are just almost impossible to really comprehend. You know what I mean? Economists don't really understand economics. You know what I mean? They have theories about it, but it's too complicated. It's too complicated. Same thing with cultural change. You know what I mean? There's theorists, but I don't really understand what the hell is. It's not like physics or something, you know?
Yeah.
So like that, it's always kind of surprising what actually happens, but you can see repetitions of themes that are constant. Like if you study like Rome, it's like, there's like the same kind of politics in Rome of the elites, and then the populares were like the people who are representing the people, but they were using them in the same way that Donald Trump does to get political power, and they were actually part of the elite, but they were pretending to care about the people, you know, in the same way. And it's like, oh my God, just wake up and read something.
It's weird. There was me and my wife, we had this weird discussion the other day. Because, I mean, there was, I don't know if you know about that, like, lawyer who blew up on a person.
Someone just told me about it. Yeah.
And I don't know. There was like this weird thing where she was like, they got him fired, and she was very happy about it. Or no, they got him evicted, and she was very happy about it. And there's like this weird thing where I don't know. To me, it's almost like, well, it didn't solve anything. It just kind of made, like, I don't know. There's this weird wanting to win mentality that's going on right now on both sides. It's like, well, that didn't solve any problem.
Right.
Like, you just made an angry guy angrier.
Right.
And you just got to pat yourself on the back.
Right, you're winning the battle, but you're losing the war.
Yeah, like
by those tactics.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's strategic. It's a lot of times it's bad tactics.
Yeah.
The left and the right. The farther to either pole they go, they just get strategically. Yeah. They get bound up in their ideology, and that prevents them from having good strategy and good practical tactics for how to actually get things to change.
Yeah.
They might. I mean, obviously, to me, obviously, one side is more correct than the other.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I'm left of center, but not really far left. But it's like
liberal leaning.
Yeah, but it's like, Jesus Christ, like have some tactics. You know what I mean? Some actual ways of getting people elected who can actually help get the policies that we need, and mostly to beat the Republican loonies right now. You know?
Well, it's like like when you just look like into like the civil rights movement, you just see like the genius within their tactics. There is something great about allowing the opponent or whatever to shoot themselves in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you take the moral high ground by not engaging in that kind of behavior.
And you just kind of allow themselves to.
I know, but the current thinking on that is that that's not extreme enough, and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Yeah.
In my opinion, there's no issues being solved. It's just sides just fighting each other.
Right. I mean, things do. The thing is that things do get better.
Yeah, I think
like
so.
there's gay rights. There's women. There's women's rights. It does change, and it does take those. It does take people who get on the front line and be annoying and be ridiculous to do that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
But then there is a point. There's some diminishing returns where that, but still doing that behavior. It's so I think it's so attractive to people to be on the cutting edge of the revolution and to be like just to perceive themselves as being rabble rousing, as being revolutionary, that it's almost irresistible.
Yeah, I think
especially
so.
when you're young, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, this kind of like you said, I don't think it's not really helping that much. Obviously, if Donald Trump's in power, then something on the left is wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
There's not something needs to change.
Yeah,
you know?
I think so. I don't know. I also think that change happens fast and slow. Like the laws sometimes will either be behind the I remember hearing like a statistic about like people who were against gay marriage, and then like in a small gap of time, that opinion changed like dramatically.
Yeah.
And I think, I think Hollywood played a big part of that, but I think a big part of it really was just people meeting people that were gay and being like, oh,
yeah,
you're not the boogeyman.
Right,
You're
exactly.
a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of I mean, I grew up in a time when it was pretty like, really looked down on, especially where I lived back east. It was like, it was awful trying to be gay back then,
Right.
And now it's like, nobody cares.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, whatever.
Yeah.
Do your duty, do your business.
Yeah. So,
I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, if you look at the kids nowadays, you know what I mean? For the most part, they're, I still feel like this, what we're seeing right now is the last gasp of the old white patriarchal dudes. You know what I mean? Their last gasp.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you just can't sustain that. There's the demographics are changing. They're going away. You know what I mean?
So.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening also is there is this last gasp, and at the same time, there is still a pushback against the old ways, and the younger people are feeling like that push is against them, like them as a white male. They're like, they're like getting defensive, like,
of course,
like that's me you're talking about. And it's like,
I understand.
And it's like,
that's a hard pill to swallow if you don't feel your own, if you don't understand privilege, like if you don't actually see that it's a fact, you know what I mean? That it's really off-putting for people to tell you that you've done all these things. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's always, being a gay white male, I have a little bit of, because no one knows I'm gay unless I tell them. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm just assumed to be a cisgendered white male. You know what I mean? And and I am, but it's like, but I do see how that privileges you in a lot of ways. Right. For socially.
Sure.
So
I mean, I'm a male. I'm a little browner in the tones, but
right.
But yeah. I mean,
as an artist too. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I remember I hear like lots of, like I've heard people complain, all these, female artists on Instagram painting in their underwear and they're and it's like blah 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 blah, and it's like, dude, they're taken back like what's like thousands of years of of them not getting any play at all, just because they're like playing off a little bit of their sensuality.
At the end of the day,
Jesus Christ,
they are the advertising person holding their can up to but their artwork is the
God.
And
if I was a hot girl, I'd be playing that up too.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, I should just hire a hot girl to pretend she's Josh Lawyer.
Exactly.
How many people would fall for that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's that's always, I've heard that before. The whole like hot girl artist that's mad at the hot girl, and you're like, dude, how about you get in your studio and you start painting,
right,
and get better at painting.
What a ridiculous thing to like be. I mean, they're jealous. It's just jealousy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, come on. It's like they deserve everything.
Yeah.
Every accolade they get they deserve.
Yeah. And
just from the injustice of no female artist even being looked at for thousands of years.
Yeah. And not only that, but I don't think anyone is deciding that they don't like your art because you're not a hot girl. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Like,
well, also look at like, someone like Picasso, like the fact that he was a virile male was totally why a lot of people dug him, or Jackson Pollock, or those guys, the strong male abstract expressionist. They're playing off the sexuality too.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I found Picasso super sexy.
I would have slept with him. He's an asshole. But
yeah, that's pretty funny. I think we've made our 2-hour mark.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so let's do a quick shout out of your Instagram. I'm not sure what your Instagram.
Yeah, it's A Hunter Caldwell.
A Hunter Caldwell. Is Hunter your middle name?
Yeah, Hunter's my middle name. It's nice. I should probably be my first name. I think Hunter Caldwell is a better art name than Adam, but
it'd be good for if you were showing at Antler Gallery. With the name
A Hunter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Nice. And then you have that show in June. So anyone in Portland or
with Roos van Vliet.
Nice.
Yes. I'm probably mispronouncing her name because it's Dutch, but she's the awesome woman painter who paints the girls with the crazy hairdos half over their faces. They're hyper realist, like crazy.
I'm pretty sure I know it.
You've seen it.
I'm just so bad at names.
She's all over the place.
I'm like,
she's really good.
I think I know exactly who you're talking about now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
She's good.
Yeah, she paints, and then they're like in outdoor, like gray backgroundish areas. Is that how
they're usually in a
beach scenes? Almost?
No, they're always in an abstract, empty space. Yeah, they're just heads. They're just heads. Yeah.
I might be confusing her.
You'd recognize her.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
there's so many artists.
That's about it. I've got that, and then a bunch of little group shows coming up with ThinkSpace and
nice. That's a good gallery.
Spoke Art. Yeah, ThinkSpace is I've been showing with them for like 10 years.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, both cool
Love
galleries.
Them. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And good meeting you, by the way. This was our first time ever meeting.
Yep.
And thanks to Sergio for leaving us.
He's gone on to better things, greener pastures.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess his prize is more important than.
No,
I'm just kidding. Yeah. But yeah, and if you guys could rate and review us on iTunes, that'd be great. That helps us out a lot. And if you are still listening, fuck off.
Nice ending.